John K. Delaney is a Democratic congressman from Maryland, and he wrote a comical article in the Washington Post urging Democrats to be less progressive. It's amazing that he thought this was a new idea. You know, he's acting like the party has been full of communists and social democrats since like the 1900s until today. He's like, why hasn't anybody tried to be more corporatist and pro-establishment and centrist? I don't understand. That's what the overwhelming majority in the party are. That's Bill Clinton, that's Hillary Clinton, that's Barack Obama, that's the overwhelming majority of Senate Democrats, people like Harry Reid. And what's this guy saying? Why don't we do more of that? That's a good idea. Oh, God. Okay, so let me give you his argument. He says, quote, Washington is paralyzed by extreme political rhetoric that creates powerful sound bites but poor policy. The big legislative updates that we need to compete in the 21st century and to raise living standards have been blocked by a reluctance to seek common ground. Now let's pause here for a second. I blame that on the Republicans for running so incredibly far to the right. But also notice how we glossed over the biggest problem in politics, which is corporations and billionaires buying the politicians and getting the legislation that they want. So he completely leaves that out. Gee, I wonder why. Probably because he takes money from the same corporations and does their bidding. And he also talks about it as if it's like a problem that's equally shared with both sides and their extreme rhetoric. No, Bernie Sanders is just intelligent. Ted Cruz is the one with the extreme rhetoric and the silly rhetoric. So let's put that into perspective. He continues here. He says, with Washington already broken, the last thing we need is a left-wing version of the Tea Party. But I am worried about where some of the loudest voices in the room could take the Democratic Party. The first thing we need is a Democratic Tea Party. And what are you afraid of? Where are these voices going to take us? They're going to take us to universal health care and out of the ridiculous wars we're in overseas. Does that sound so bad? But he's going to give more detail. He says, quote, rejecting a trade agreement with Asia, oh, I see what this is about, the TPP, expanding entitlement programs that crowd out other priorities, and a desire to relitigate the financial crisis are becoming dominant positions among Democrats. Although these subjects may make for good partisan talking points, they do not provide the building blocks for a positive and bold agenda to create jobs and improve the lives of Americans. Yes, they do. That's the point. All right, now that's the heart of his argument. That's the crux of his disagreement here with progressives. He's saying, number one, stop being against the TPP. Well, why would they stop being against the TPP? We've covered studies from the Economic Policy Institute that say we're going to lose hundreds of thousands, if not millions of jobs as a result of the TPP. Never mind the fact that we're rewarding Brunei, who just implemented Sharia law, and we're patting Malaysia on the back when we know that they tolerate slave labor. Obama and the Republicans are working together right now to strip a provision out of the TPP that's anti-slave labor. So what are you saying? How can you possibly be for that agreement? Well, I know the answer to that question because you're paid by the corporations that are going to benefit from this. So you're their attack dog here, basically. So don't tell me that, oh, it's bad for the American people if you're against the TPP. It's good for the American people if you're against the TPP. The TPP would be horrible for them. All right, and then when he says, well, expanding entitlement programs is a bad idea. Why? He says, well, then we can't focus on other priorities. Why? I don't see why that's the case. Expanding entitlement programs is an incredibly popular idea. They just did polling on this recently because Bernie Sanders has been calling for this. The overwhelming majority of Americans were like, yeah, actually, we like that. We like Social Security. We like Medicare. These things aren't even really entitlement programs. They're earned benefit programs. You pay into it, you take out of it. It's just a giant social insurance program. So when people, know what it is and you poll them, they go, oh, yeah, no, we like that. Let's do more of that. But what's this idiot saying? I disagree with the American people, and I'm going to pretend like it's a good thing to be against expanding these programs. And let's be clear here. This is one of those guys who maybe he's in favor of keeping Social Security the same and not expanding it. I'll give him a pass if that's the case. But more than likely, he's one of these establishment Democrats who does decent talking points sometimes on Social Security and Medicare, but he would be okay with some forms of privatization that the Republicans have been trying to push for the longest time now. These are the Democrats that should scare the shit out of you, because these Democrats are Democrats in name only. They don't actually care to fight for the policies that the Democratic people in America want. So he's the problem. The problem is not the progressive Tea Party, as he calls it. You're the problem. And then finally, he says, well, why are they relitigating the financial crisis? Because Dodd-Frank was a joke. It was totally watered down. It was riddled with loopholes. And now they're trying to dismantle the few regulations that were put in place. So to relitigate the financial crisis is to say, hey, no, we really don't want this to happen again, and let's take steps to prevent it from happening again. If you're not talking about the financial crisis anymore, then you're a fool who thinks that the economy is stable now and that the recovery went to everybody and that everything is going to be okay. Well, it's not going to be okay. We know that we reinflated the bubble. We know that we have a student loan debt crisis coming. We know that we have 101 different problems to deal with in the economy. And when progressives talk about doing financial regulation again, financial reform, and they continue to talk about the Great Recession, they're doing it because it's still an important issue. I mean, we've covered studies that describe how over 90% of the income gains in the recovery went to the top 1%. With that being the case, the American people are still struggling, and they need a representative. They need a representative to talk about these issues, like addressing the financial crisis in a better way. Clearly, Representative Delaney is not the person who's going to lead that charge. In fact, he's going to fight against the people who are leading that charge.